Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're taking what feels like the ultimate shortcut into modern entrepreneurship. We're going to forget the venture capital, forget the, $100,000 launch budget, and really forget the pressure to invent the next big social media platform.
We've spent a lot of time dissecting the playbook of a true serial entrepreneur. Some people call him the king of side hustles. This is a guy who claims to have launched over 80 different businesses in his career. And this isn't about becoming a unicorn or a billionaire. It's about building consistent, reliable cash flow through means that are, frankly, accessible to almost everyone.
Exactly. The source material we've been looking at is just a treasure trove of actionable wisdom, and it's all centered on this stunningly simple premise. Nearly 90% of viable business ideas today can be launched and validated with $500 or less. So if you've been sitting there waiting for the perfect moment or, the perfect bankroll, this is the deep dive that tells you your capital concerns are probably an excuse.
Right. Our mission here is to extract that foundational mentality you need to even think about starting. And then we're moving straight to a concrete, segmented plan. We're going to answer two really critical questions. First, what is the emotional and psychological wiring you need? And second, what specific businesses would you start today, right now, with small amounts of money, say $500, $1,000, and $5,000?
And to really understand this mentality, you have to go back to the beginning. This entrepreneur's entire philosophy, it's rooted in his very first venture, which happened when he was just 9 years old. It wasn't driven by, business school concepts or market trends. It was driven by this desire for a single item, a specific, beautiful red Schwinn bicycle that his family just couldn't afford.
Yeah, and he lived right across the street from a golf course. So while he couldn't just, buy the bike with savings, he noticed this constant, renewable, and pretty valuable resource scattered all around his yard and in neighborhood ditches: lost golf balls.
Lost golf balls. It's not high-tech. It's not complicated. It was just pure, visible inventory replenishment happening every single day.
So he starts collecting them, he's cleaning them up meticulously, making them look new again. And then he builds this rudimentary sign out of a piece of plywood that just says, "Golf balls, 3 for $1."
And that simple transaction, that was it. That taught him the most profound business lesson he ever learned.
And that's really the core lens through which we're going to view everything today. That little childhood transaction proved that commerce is approachable, it's simple, and it provides an immediate, tangible way for you to take control of your own life. He didn't ask for permission, he didn't wait for a loan, and he certainly didn't worry about being laughed at. He just saw a need and he met it.
And that approachability, that pure mechanical joy of turning $1 into two, that's what fuels his entire 80 business career. Okay, so let's unpack this. Because before we even touch those $500 ideas, we have to talk about the foundational mentality. Because if we don't get the emotional wiring right, every tactic we discuss from here on out is, it's pretty much useless. So when you look at the thousands, maybe millions of people who want to start a side hustle but just never do, what does the source material say is the single biggest, almost universal roadblock?
It's entirely emotional. It's that people care way too much about what other people think. The entrepreneur is incredibly blunt about this. He basically says that the pain of a person's financial problem, the crushing debt, the instability, the misery of a 9-to-5 job they hate, even all of that is still insufficient to overcome the fear of judgment.
That fear of judgment is so powerful, and it's not just your immediate circle anymore.
Not at all.
It's the hyperconnectivity of the modern world. You won't launch that simple service business because you're absolutely terrified that some random person from high school, somebody you haven't spoken to in 15 years, might see your new business Facebook page and leave some cynical or, ridiculing comment.
Exactly. The pain of being perceived as desperate or small time by a total stranger somehow outweighs the daily grinding struggle of your current situation. The key mindset shift, he argues, is you have to learn to flip the switch. You have to essentially turn off caring about external opinions and potential ridicule. If you can't do that, the market isn't your barrier, your own self-consciousness is.
Once you overcome that, the market is truly wide open.
It is.
Okay, so once that switch is flipped, the next piece of popular advice we really need to talk about is this pressure to follow your passion. This entrepreneur, he takes a pretty controversial stance on this. He says the rule is ignore passion, follow the profit until you can afford to follow your passion.
And this isn't cynical, it's just pragmatic, it's statistical. He argues that the statistical likelihood of what you inherently love and what currently makes significant money, The odds of those two things overlapping right at the beginning is almost zero. So if you spend 3 years trying to force a business based on a non-profitable passion, you burn out, you lose money, and then you just conclude that entrepreneurship doesn't work.
So instead of trying to force your passion onto a product, the initial passion should just be the process itself, the mastery of turning $1 into two.
Yes, exactly. Focus on commerce, on cash flow, and on proving the fundamental mechanics of profit. And this is so important because, as he points out, before you can achieve true hands-off passive income, you have to be willing to create what he calls active income, or, as he more bluntly puts it, sweaty, ugly income.
Sweaty, ugly income. I love that phrase. It really sticks. Let's dig into his personal experience with that concierge car buying business, because that just paints the picture perfectly.
Okay, so this was early in his career. He saw a gap in the market for people who absolutely hated the dealership experience, but didn't know how to navigate wholesale auctions. So he went through the really intensive regulatory process to get a dealer's permit.
Which gave him access to options regular people couldn't get into.
Right, and his pitch was simple. Tell me the exact model, color, and mileage you want. I'll use my access to buy it for you below retail, and you just pay me a fixed fee. This meant he completely avoided the massive inventory risk that traditional car dealers have.
On paper, that sounds great. A clean, high-margin service.
On paper, yes. The reality was the ugly part. He wasn't a car guy. He was frequently driving these beat-up auction vehicles for hours across the state, dealing with unexpected breakdowns. You know, standing on scalding hot Texas blacktop waiting for a tow truck and just dealing with tons of intense regulatory paperwork.
So he was making good money, it was
Right.
profitable, but the labor was just taxing and had zero fun involved. And the source notes, he shut it down pretty quickly. So why not just push through if it was working?
Because he understood the relationship between persistence and energy. A lack of genuine passion for that specific work meant that the moment he hit friction, the car breaking down on the side of the road, the regulatory headache, he was just eager to abandon it.
But because he had other profitable things going on, his plan B, he could just pivot. He didn't have to quit entrepreneurship entirely.
Precisely. The lesson isn't that you have to hate your work, but you have to recognize that if the work is profitable, that profit gives you the fuel to pivot to something that might align better with your energy levels down the line. It shortens the runway you need to get to the passion stage.
Right. And pivoting quickly requires a strong bias for action. You can't just let ideas sit around. He illustrates this so well with the viral story of the gas station brand, BIES.
Oh, this story is fantastic.
This is where it gets really insightful for anyone who hasn't experienced it. BIES is, it's more than a gas station. It's a massive cultural phenomenon. It's a destination. Their stores are often 40, 60, even 80,000 square feet. People will travel for hours just to visit, and their merchandise, shirts, hats, coffee cups, you see it being worn all over the world.
And the entrepreneur recognized this fanatical brand loyalty when he was running an e-commerce fulfillment business. He was processing orders for thousands of different companies, and he drew this analogy to massive entertainment brands like Disney. Disney, of course, successfully monetizes its brand loyalty through huge online merchandise sales.
So he does the competitive analysis. BIES has this Disney-level brand loyalty, but they only have about 50 physical locations, mostly concentrated in the Southeast U.S.
So he goes to their official website, and he's looking for that shop online button.
Yeah.
Nothing. No functional online store. And that was the lightning strike. A huge brand, global demand for their merchandise, and zero digital storefront.
But wait, I have to inject some friction here. Wouldn't the immediate cautious thought be, if a brand is that big and they don't have an online store, they must not want one? Or maybe they'd sue anyone who tried to set one up. That seems like a huge legal risk.
And that is the crucial difference between what he calls the starter mentality and the operator or finisher mentality. The starter prioritizes speed and validation over legal perfectibility. He acknowledged the risk, absolutely, but he decided to operate on a viral or bust strategy. The moment he had the idea, he acted within days.
And what did that action look like practically?
He spent thousands of dollars. He traveled to a store and bought, quite literally, one of everything. Hats, shirts, snacks, all the branded items. He hired a photographer immediately, launched his own online store, and then leveraged his existing knowledge of Facebook ads and SEO to just push for viral exposure.
And the result was?
Stunning. Hundreds of thousands of dollars in revenue in the first 30 days. Purely organic. It just demonstrated this massive pent-up demand.
So of course he got the inevitable cease and desist letter from the brand.
He did. But because the business was already a proven cash-flowing entity, the negotiation was different. He was required to put up some key disclaimers, clarifying his site wasn't officially affiliated. But crucially, the site is still successful 5 years later. The takeaway from the BIES story for you, the listener, is vital. Shorten the amount of time between having a curious idea and acting on it. Every time you shrink that gap, that hesitation, that overthinking, you strengthen your bias for action muscle. It compounds.
You test for demand immediately, even if it means taking on some calculated risk, and then you sort out the legal stuff later once the profitability has been validated. Okay, so we've shifted the mentality from fear to action. Now let's move to strategy. When most people start thinking of a business, they spend weeks, maybe months, trying to find a truly unique idea, something that doesn't exist. Then they Google their concept, see 50 competitors, and they just shut down, concluding the market is oversaturated.
That is the paralyzing mistake. It's operating under a zero-sum game mentality. This entrepreneur, he sees an existing, successful business model and thinks the exact opposite. He thinks, this is perfect, someone else went to the front lines, they absorbed all the risk, and they validated this business for me.
In other words, if someone is already making money doing something, that's just proof. Proof that the market exists and that the system works.
Absolutely. The market is almost never a zero-sum game. If one company is successful, the market is almost always big enough for 2 or 3 or 20. He argues that innovation, especially in the beginning, is often just a mask for ego or pride. You think you're smarter than the person who's been successfully running that established model for a decade. The smart money copies first, then innovates much, much later.
So if we accept that copying is the fastest path to profit, how do we strategically reverse engineer success without, stealing intellectual property?
He uses 2 very specific, very low-cost competitive intelligence tools. The first one is the Web Archive.
The Wayback Machine. How does a historical archive help you launch a business today?
It's incredible. The Web Archive gives you these digital historical snapshots of any competitor's website over the last decade. So instead of just looking at what they're doing right now, you can analyze their entire evolution. You can see exactly where they started, which product offerings failed, and which marketing angles gained traction over time.
Can you give us a specific example of a data point you'd be looking for there?
Sure. You might see a competitor started their subscription product at $99 a month, but then they quickly dropped it to $49 2 months later. And then 9 months after that, they locked it in at $69. What does that tell you? It tells you that $99 was too high for market entry, and $49 was probably sustainable enough to get users, but not profitable enough long term. So your starting price point should probably be $69. You're mapping their entire journey to success.
And the second tool is SimilarWeb, which overlays traffic data on top of that.
Yes, and this is essential for understanding the impact of those changes. So the Web Archive shows they redesigned their website in, say, the third quarter of 2022. SimilarWeb confirms that immediately after that redesign, their traffic jumped from 3,000 visits a month to 4,500. A deeper look might show the redesign was specifically focused on being mobile responsive. So the conclusion is simple. They spent thousands of dollars to figure out mobile friendliness matters. I'll just start mobile friendly from day one.
So the strategy is pretty simple. Start where the successful competitor is today. Don't try to be unique. Don't try to reinvent the wheel. Just copy the highest performing model and save your innovation budget for later.
And the most powerful example of this philosophy is his case study on the iPhone screen recycling business. It just perfectly illustrates how an accidental data point can validate an entire vertical.
Right. This goes back to around 2010. He was running a small phone repair business out of his college apartment. And he got this cold call, a completely accidental validation from a buyer.
Yeah, the buyer offered him $3 for every broken iPhone screen he had. He explained that these broken screens were being shipped to China, where the shattered glass was removed, the underlying components were tested, and new glass was applied. Then they were sold as remanufactured units.
Most people would have just been happy to get $3 per screen to get rid of their junk. But he had this epiphany.
He realized the profitable business isn't fixing the screens, it's being the middleman who facilitates the recycling and remanufacturing. He saw the whole supply chain in that one phone call.
So he immediately decided, I need to be in that business.
He did, and he didn't have Web Archive data on his new competitor, so he went straight to the source. He got on Alibaba, the huge global e-commerce platform, and he started finding people who were selling screens. He just messaged them, asked them who they recycled with, shipped them some samples, and successfully launched a competing screen recycling business.
And what's remarkable here is the scale. This wasn't a small side hustle. That business did $2 million in its first year and grew to $9 million before he exited. The key point is he didn't even try to improve the model at first. He just knew the competitor was cold calling and that the business worked, so he applied his existing marketing skills to do the same thing, just better, faster, and bigger.
And that actually leads to a really crucial warning, something he learned the hard way. The danger of premature innovation, especially when you're dealing with what he calls old problems.
Tell us about the mistake he made with his e-commerce fulfillment business, the warehousing and shipping venture.
Okay, so he was looking at his established competitors in the fulfillment space, and they all had these incredibly complex pricing structures: storage fees, pick and pack fees, tracking fees, minimum order fees, return processing fees, just on and on. He looked at all that complexity and, falling victim to his own ego, he thought they were all idiots.
So he decided his big differentiator would be radical simplicity.
Exactly. He tried to simplify the whole thing into one single flat rate with no storage fees at all. He believed this would attract all the brands that were tired of complicated invoices.
And what happened?
He learned the hard way that the competitors' complex fees weren't arbitrary. They were stress-tested solutions to old, painful problems. For instance, those storage fees. They exist for a crucial reason. Sometimes your customers go out of business and they leave you holding thousands of pallets of their unsellable inventory. If you don't charge for storage, you absorb all of that cost and risk yourself.
Wow, so the complexity wasn't inefficiency, it was a defense mechanism. It was the system protecting itself against known liabilities that had been discovered over years of painful experience.
That's the core advice he gives from that failure. 95% of the business issues you will ever face are old problems. Things like hiring, cash flow management, legal structure, inventory systems. For old problems, you copy the established systems and processes without questioning them. You should only reserve your experimentation and innovation budget for genuinely new problems, like figuring out how to integrate AI tools or leveraging a brand new social platform that didn't even exist 2 years ago.
Okay, so we've got the right mentality and the replication strategy. Now we have to talk about momentum. How to validate an idea quickly and cheaply. So what exactly is validation in this framework?
Validation is just checking if the market gives a damn about your product and checking that really, really quickly. It's not about slow incremental growth that requires endless promotion. The ideal validation, he says, is when the boulder is chasing you.
When the boulder is chasing you. That sounds intense.
It is. It means demand is so overwhelming that you're struggling to keep up with orders. You're not sitting around trying to figure out how to generate your first lead. If you find yourself constantly distracted by the next shiny object, you haven't found product market fit. True fit generates its own overwhelming demand.
And he emphasizes that validation doesn't always need complex online tools.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's purely experiential. He uses the example of his wife's cookie bar business and the power of in-person validation at a farmer's market.
This is the purest, lowest friction form of testing you can do. You set up a simple table, you sell samples, and you observe 3 nonverbal signals at the same time. 1, what people say about the product. Is it, oh, this is delicious, or is it, that's interesting. 2, their body language while they're eating it. Do they savor it? Do they throw the rest away quickly? And 3, their reaction to the price. Do they hesitate, or do they pull out their wallet immediately?
And if all 3 of those things, the verbal feedback, the body language, and the willingness to pay, if they all overlap enthusiastically, then you have a product that's been truly validated.
Right, and if the reactions are just lukewarm, you know you're going to be pushing a boulder up a hill no matter how much you spend on ads later.
Okay, so that brings us to online validation. For the listener who's starting an online venture, the entrepreneur is crystal clear. If he had to pick one single tool for low-friction validation, it is the Meta Facebook ecosystem.
Marketplace, groups, ads, and WhatsApp. That's it.
Why not a complex landing page or a full website build right away?
Because that just adds time and friction and cost, all the things that slow down that bias for action. Facebook's ecosystem is accessible to billions of people, and testing a product there takes minutes, not days. He walks us through this brilliant 5-step validation process using a hypothetical product, women's creatine gummies.
Okay, let's go through this step by step for the listener who wants to apply this today.
Okay, step 1, the mock-up. Forget about sourcing inventory or building a brand. You use AI image generators, tools like Nano, Midjourney, or even ChatGPT's image function to quickly create realistic product photos. And you create photos for 2 competing form factors, the traditional powder container and the new higher convenience gummy container. This takes minutes and costs virtually nothing.
Step 2, the low-friction test on Marketplace. So you post both of those forms to Facebook Marketplace with the exact same basic pitch, description, and price point.
And the goal here is explicitly not to sell creatine on Marketplace. The goal is to gather data. You track the views, the clicks on the listing, and most importantly, the messages you receive. Is this still available? Or where can I buy this? You log all of this data in a simple Google Sheet, and within 2 hours, you will know which form factor powder or gummy has higher initial demand, and you haven't spent a single cent on inventory.
Okay, step 3, boost and refine. Now you bring in a little capital, but just a tiny bit. You spend a mere $10 boosting both of those Marketplace ads to a specific geographically relevant area.
And this just confirms if that initial demand was organic luck or a genuine signal. At the same time, you can post, say, 10 more ads with different variations, different headings like creatine for moms versus fitness supplement, and different price points. You're basically running a constant, cheap A/B test to gather all these rich data points.
Step 4 is group research. So while those Marketplace ads are running, you go deep into Facebook groups. You join relevant, highly engaged groups like Moms Who Work Out, Female Ultra Runners, things like that.
And you use the group's search bar to find terms like creatine gummies or best pre-workout. This lets you pull invaluable data on what customers are already thinking, which brands are they complaining about, what are the pain points, which brands are they praising, and what price points are considered normal in that community.
This entire low-friction validation process, from the initial idea to a data-rich conclusion, takes about 2 hours of focused effort. That is just incredible velocity.
And only after all of this intense, rapid testing do you move on to learning the actual mechanism of advertising. He urges everyone to learn Facebook ads. He calls it the infinite money glitch, which, despite its complexity, you can learn proficiently enough to start driving profitable traffic in just a couple of dedicated days.
The point is, test the demand before you invest time in the complex tools. That validation process really proves that capital is secondary to action. But now let's put capital back into the equation. We're going to walk through 3 specific tiers of investment. The question is, what business would the king of side hustles launch today if he only had this specific amount of money in front of him?
Yeah, this is the really actionable core of the source material. And we're going to start with the absolute lowest barrier to entry, ###A, $500 businesses.
Okay, so the entrepreneur's absolute favorite idea right now, the one he believes has the highest ceiling for the lowest cost, is the AI implementation agency.
The opportunity here is driven by this massive documented knowledge gap. You've got 400 million small businesses globally. 77% of their owners recognize that AI is transformational for their operations, yet only 5% are actually using it in any meaningful way.
So that means 72% of small businesses know they need to adopt AI, but they lack the time, the budget, or just the competence to actually implement it. They are ripe to pay someone else to do it for them.
Exactly. And the key is to sell implementation, not theory. The $500 budget breaks down like this. You spend about $100 learning vibe coding.
Okay, we need to define vibe coding for the listener. That sounds technical, but we're talking about a low capital start here.
Right. Vibe coding in this context just means using tools like Replit, Lindy, or other natural language prompt-based application builders. You aren't writing proprietary code from scratch. You're asking the large language model, the LLM, to build me a fully functional website with a customer management system for a mobile dog groomer. It generates the skeleton code and the functionality, which you then tailor. You're selling your ability to correctly prompt and integrate the tools, not your ability to code.
And the remaining $400.
That goes straight into low-cost meta ads. You target local businesses, plumbers, roofers, gym owners, within a defined 5-mile radius, and you promise them one thing. We will save you 10 hours a week or capture lost revenue using simple AI tools.
And the revenue model here is fantastic for cash flow. You charge somewhere between $500 to $5,000 upfront for the implementation, plus a 20% recurring monthly maintenance fee. That recurring fee is what turns this into a high-value, predictable business.
And the specific example he gives is critical. He talks about a local gutter cleaning business owner who was losing $3,000 jobs because they stopped answering the phone after 9:30 at night.
So the entrepreneur implemented a simple AI voice agent using this vibe coding approach.
Yep. It was trained on the business owner's existing scripts and pricing.
Yeah.
So if a lead called late, the AI would answer immediately, sound human, qualify the lead, are you in our service area? Do you need cleaning or repair? And then it would provide an instant, quote, range and schedule a follow-up, all while the owner was sleeping.
So the solution paid for itself almost instantly just by capturing one of those missed jobs.
Immediately. And the scalability comes from just replicating that exact system for every other service business that has a similar after-hours lead loss problem.
Okay, next on the $500 list is drop servicing in the home services sector.
This is just a twist on dropshipping. But instead of selling a physical product made overseas, you're selling the service provided by a local worker. Your $500 budget is used to build a sharp, modern website, say, for local handyman services or garage repair, and then running basic lead generation ads.
So the entrepreneur, you act as the professional front end,
Yeah,
the polished digital experience.
precisely. You subcontract the fulfillment, the actual repair or labor to local, established, but digitally inept repair companies. You charge a premium for a superior service. Most local home service companies have terrible digital operations. Their UI, what you see on their website, is archaic, and their UX, how it feels to book with them, is painful. You're selling a dramatically improved customer journey. If Bob's Auto Repair, who has a terrible website and answers calls maybe half the time, charges $40 for an oil change, your professional, polished, easy-to-book website charges $80.
And then you just pay Bob his $40 and you keep the margin. You're essentially a high-efficiency lead aggregator and customer management system.
Yeah.
Right. The risk here, which he advises mitigating, is liability. You need robust contracts with your subcontractors that clearly define quality standards and who's liable if a job is botched. But the target market is massive. Plumbing, junk removal, pool cleaning, any home service where the existing digital experience is just frustratingly poor.
Okay, moving on to idea number 3, directory websites and leveraging what he calls permissionless marketing.
This is a really low-cost, low-maintenance model that's built for passive income. We build a hyper-niche, highly specific directory. We're talking about something like top 10 dog parks in Seattle or WisconsinIceSuppliers.com.
That sounds incredibly niche. Why not a broader directory?
The hyper-niche focus lets you benefit from long-tail SEO people searching for very specific, low-competition terms. You can launch it using cheap or free website builders for less than $100. It's designed to get organic traffic without expensive paid ads at the start.
And the monetization strategy has 2 phases.
It does. Phase 1 is just standard display ads, simple Google Ad Network banners once you hit certain traffic thresholds. Phase 2 is where the permissionless part comes in. You proactively add businesses to the directory without asking them a free listing. Then, once your Google Analytics confirms that you're successfully driving traffic or leads to a specific business, you reach out to them.
And the pitch is compelling. Hey, we've been sending you customers for free. Would you like to pay $300 a year for priority placement at the top of the list?
Exactly. You're demonstrating the value first. It's a zero-employee numbers game. The cost is so low you can launch 10 or 20 of these directories. Most will probably make $0, but if 2 or 3 of them start making a few $1,000s a month passively, you've hit an excellent return on your time.
And finally, in the $500 category, a perennial favorite, vending machines.
This is a tangible asset business. You can often find an existing snack or drink machine on Facebook Marketplace for $300 or $400. The remaining 100 is used to stock it, and you use bulk purchases from places like Costco or Sam's Club to maximize your margin.
The logistics sound simple enough, but the entrepreneur stresses that placement is absolutely everything.
It is. Placement determines your unit economics. He notes that while auto repair shops or laundromats seem good, apartment building lobbies are smaller, independent office buildings often yield better, more consistent volume because you capture repeat customers in a captive environment.
What are the operational headaches you need to plan for?
Inventory and maintenance. You need a dedicated, efficient restock route. And crucially, the data suggests you should avoid trying to be trendy. The top sellers are always the unsexy, high-margin, consistent things. Doritos, Coke, water, not artisanal health bars. The ability to scale this business comes when you can hire a part-time person to restock and just focus purely on acquiring new locations. #B, $1,000. Business.
All right, let's double the starting capital to $1,000. This lets you get into slightly higher inventory or ad spend. What's the first idea here?
Wedding rentals. This is a physical, niche, high-margin business that capitalizes on a really clear macro trend. Roughly 75% of modern weddings are now outdoors. This creates this persistent one-off demand for large, unique rental items that the venues themselves don't provide.
And $1,000 is enough to get tangible inventory. You could build a trending, high-demand item like a beautiful, modern wedding arch using treated 2x4s and hardware for only $200 or $300.
And that single arch can easily rent for $1,000 per wedding, especially if you include delivery and setup. The margins are astronomical, but the sales strategy here is vital. You have to avoid marketing to individual brides that's low surface area, high stress, and just highly segmented.
Instead, you market to the wedding planners and event organizers.
This is your high surface area target. You spend the remaining $700 of the budget on marketing materials, professional photos of the arch, a simple brochure and focused meta ads, targeting planners within a 100-mile radius. One solid relationship with the planner could yield 20 rentals a year.
The main headache is just storage and transportation, right?
Right. All labor costs you have to factor in, but they justify that high rental fee.
Okay. The second idea for $1,000 moves back into the pure information business. Local email newsletters.
This is a cash flow accelerating model built entirely on ad spend. You create a weekly email focusing on local news, events, and business discounts in a defined city. Let's use Seattle as an example.
The initial software costs are basically nothing. You can get free trials on platforms like ConvertKit or Beehive. So the full $1,000 is allocated to meta ads specifically for subscriber acquisition within a targeted radius around Seattle.
The goal is aggressive. Acquire 1,000 subscribers quickly. He estimates that with optimized targeting, you can get a highly localized, engaged subscriber for about $1. You could do this within a few weeks.
There's a crucial content note here. The source advises. It must be written by you, the founder, in your natural local language, not by ChatGPT. Why so strict?
Because the entire value proposition is your authentic voice and local knowledge. If the content feels generic or machine-generated, you lose the trust and personalization that drives the high open rates and community loyalty you need to monetize.
And how does the monetization work with only 1,000 subscribers?
It's rapid through sponsorships. The logic is that roughly 10% of adults are business owners. So 1,000 subscribers means you have about 100 potential sponsors in your list. You can easily charge roughly 50 cents per subscriber per month for a banner ad slot.
So if you're sending 4 emails a month, that's $500 a send.
Yes, the math is clear. That initial $1,000 investment is entirely recouped within 2 months. The content is reusable, and the process is highly scalable. You create a template and just replicate the model city by city, handing the writing off to a localized freelancer in each new market. ###C, $5,000 business.
Okay, let's move to the highest tier, $5,000. This amount of capital lets you move into leveraged assets, making true passive income a bit more realistic. The focus here is on RV parks and mobile home parks.
This vertical is capitalizing on massive macro trends. You've got 10,000 baby boomers retiring every single day, many of them seeking simplified living, and then you have millennials who are increasingly interested in the traveling van life picture.
And he argues that small RV parks, the ones with just 3 to 10 sites, are often 3 to 10 times more profitable than buying a single-family rental home.
Right, because the risk is distributed across multiple tenants. And critically, you own the land, but the tenants own their dwelling, the RV or the mobile home. So they're responsible for maintenance, not you. But the central question is, how do you buy a $200,000 piece of income-producing real estate with only $5,000?
This is where the acquisition strategy of seller financing is absolutely essential. We need to break this down clearly.
Okay. Seller financing means the seller, the current owner, agrees to hold the promissory note. They essentially become the bank. They accept monthly payments from you, the new owner, instead of requiring a massive lump sum from a traditional bank.
So that $5,000 isn't the down payment on the property itself. It's the operating capital to make the deal possible.
Correct. You allocate about $2,000 to due diligence inspections, title policy, environmental reviews, just to make sure the park is clean and legitimate. The rest is operating capital for immediate needs. Fixing a broken power box, catching up on utility bills, or just general cleanup.
Why would a seller ever agree to this kind of risk? Why not just sell for cash?
Often, these are older owners who are just tired of managing the park. They might prefer the stability of a monthly income stream over a big, taxable lump sum. Trust is everything here. You establish trust by showing you're competent and committed to maintaining the park. And crucially, the seller accepts the risk because if you, the new owner, default on payments, they take the park back immediately and they get to keep all the equity you've paid so far. They have all the leverage.
Let's look at the unit economics. You buy an undervalued park for $200,000 at a 10% cap rate, which, for the listener, is just your net operating income divided by the asset price, basically your ROI. That yields $20,000 in annual profit.
And your goal is performance improvement. Most of these small parks have zero online presence. So you post free ads on Facebook Marketplace, you create a simple one-page website, you digitize rent collection, you clean up the landscaping. This easily pushes up occupancy and rent rates, increasing your annual profit from $20,000, $30,000 in the first year alone.
And that profit improvement immediately raises the park's valuation, making it worth far more than the initial $200,000, even if you still owe the seller money.
And this entrepreneur, he leveraged this exact strategy across 35 parks over 7 years, generating between $400,000 and $600,000 in net profit in just this one vertical. It's a proven model based on making minimal digital updates to old infrastructure.
We've covered the practical launch plan. Now let's pivot to the structural and internal decisions that really dictate long-term success. And let's start with a counterintuitive warning he gives about partnerships.
Yeah, the data he cites suggests that business failure rates are significantly higher with co-founders than with solo founders. And this just flies in the face of that classic Silicon Valley narrative of two college roommates building a giant company.
He argues the problem lies in the casual nature of the agreement. People will spend years vetting a life partner, but they'll decide on a 50-50 business partner over avocado toast, usually based on pure excitement. And a 50-50 split implies perfect equity. Equal money, equal effort, equal value, equal history, and most impossibly, selfless development for years and years.
Resentment is almost inevitable because contributions will never stay perfectly balanced. One partner will always feel like they're doing more or contributing more value. His strong advice is to solo found first. Learn who you are. Are you a starter, a maintainer, or a finisher before you ever formalize a partnership?
Okay, let's detail those three crucial roles he identifies, because not every entrepreneur is built for every phase of a business.
Right. The starter, or the visionary, is the idea machine. The person who can launch and market a concept from 0 to 1. They thrive on novelty. Then you have the maintainer, or the operator. This person loves process. They wake up every day excited to tweak efficiency, manage growth, and improve systems. That's the 1 to 5 journey. And finally, the finisher, or the deal guy. This is the super connector who specializes in complex deals, acquisitions, and exits, the 5 to 10.
And the entrepreneur identifies himself as a starter, and he knows that he has to hand the reins off early or find a partner because his lack of interest in maintenance would cause the business to stall or fall apart after that initial excitement wears off.
And that self-awareness is key. And if you do decide you need a partner, his advice on splitting equity is crucial. Avoid what he calls defining the relationship, or DTR, too early or too late.
Right. Defining it too early at that excited brunch is a setup for failure. But defining it 2 years later when revenue is flying is just a recipe for a lawsuit, because the perceived value each person contributed is already way too different.
The sweet spot is setting a defined, achievable metric, maybe a revenue target like $10,000 or a certain number of customers. You agree up front. Once we hit this milestone, we will sit down and formalize the equity split based on our proven, realized contributions to date. That forces both parties to prove their value before the stakes get too high.
Okay, finally, we have to confront the focus paradox. We are constantly told by successful entrepreneurs, the Silicon Valley elite, the billionaires, that you have to maintain obsessive focus. You have to cut out 80% of the noise to concentrate on one single massive objective.
And this entrepreneur's experience launching 80 businesses offers a contrasting philosophy. He readily acknowledges that the hyper-focused individual is statistically more likely to become a billionaire. But the person who maintains momentum and tests many things is significantly more likely to become a millionaire.
That's a really critical distinction. The lifestyle difference between those two achievements is massive.
It is, and it's a deeply personal choice. He specifically says he does not want the billion-dollar life. He doesn't want the intense scrutiny, the constant travel, the endless meetings, the time away from his family. He chooses the dynamic, awesome life that comes from focusing less, not more. He prioritizes variety and energy over maximizing every last dollar.
I have to challenge that a little bit, though. Doesn't that lack of focus, testing 80 different things, doesn't that inherently dilute your effort and prevent you from achieving deep mastery in any one vertical?
That is the common counterargument, and the source addresses it directly. He argues that often a lack of focus isn't an external problem, it's an internal signal. If you find yourself consistently distracted, it might be a signal that the business you're currently focusing on isn't giving you energy, and there's a more profitable or better aligned opportunity out there. Paying attention to that signal and acting on it is better than forcing commitment to a dead-end idea.
And this momentum-driven approach, it feeds into the ultimate motivator. The concept of burning the boats. Removing your plan B, quitting a job, or your safety net is often necessary for success.
He cites this as highly motivating, often resulting in a 10 times multiplier on your effort and your outcome. A side hustle making $50,000 a year at 20 hours a week might, once that safety net is gone, jump to $500,000 a year at 40 hours a week. Because the perceived threat of failure forces maximum effort. But, this is a big but, he gives a strong warning against doing this prematurely.
What are the prerequisites before you quit your job and burn the boats?
You have to have successfully validated the business using those low-friction methods we talked about. You must have proven that your ads are converting profitably, and you must have clear, documented demand that shows a path to scaling before you walk away from stability. Burning the boats without validation isn't motivation, it's just recklessness. Hashtag tag outro.
We have completed the deep dive into the low-capital strategy of the king of side hustles. We've moved from the philosophical need to overcome the fear of judgment, all the way to the practical mechanics of buying an RV park with $5,000.
And if you take away 4 key lessons from this whole process, let them be these. Lesson 1. Entrepreneurship is accessible. Business is cheap and fast to test. Start with a goal of proving demand with $500 or less. The bottleneck isn't capital, it's action.
Lesson 2. Innovation is overrated. Copying and optimizing an existing validated model is a faster, lower-risk path to profitability than trying to be unique from day one. Save your ego for later.
Lesson 3. Leverage the massive macro opportunity of AI by implementing it in old, analog businesses. The knowledge gap is so vast that simple automation tools can be sold to local business owners immediately for high recurring fees.
And lesson 4. You must be willing to accept sweaty, ugly income, that profitable, non-glamorous work, until you have the financial stability to transition into the passion projects that genuinely give you energy. Follow the profit first.
And that leads directly into our final provocative thought for you to consider this week. The pervasive narrative you see online is that entrepreneurship is synonymous with total freedom and independence. But the reality is that it is often a trade-off for stability and predictability.
You don't eliminate constraints, you just change them. You trade a single boss and a predictable paycheck for dozens of bosses. Your clients, your suppliers, your partners, your team members, all of them demanding your time and attention constantly.
The question you really have to answer before you start this journey is this. Am I truly attracted to the idea of freedom and independence, or do I actually enjoy the day-to-day routine and stability that comes with a conventional job? The grind of entrepreneurship involves tremendous dependency on external factors and constant effort. You need to evaluate the cost of this trade-off against your own personal wiring. Is the dependency that comes with running your own business worth giving up the predictability of the 9-to-5? Your path forward depends entirely on how you honestly answer that question. Think hard about that trade-off.